Welcome, everybody. It's the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. It's a Q&A Monday. Plus, I'll talk about some of the stuff that went on this weekend, including a good weekend for the Cleveland Guardians at home against the Cubs while I was freezing my butt off on Sunday, yesterday. I'll get into all that, but first I want to tell you that if you're getting into the swing of baseball season, it's a great time, even though it was freezing at the ballpark yesterday. Bet Rivers and the Bullpen are giving you a bonus bet to give you a practice swing. Bettors in Ohio can get a $10 bonus bet to use on baseball when they enter the code ATB316 in your Bet Rivers app. You see it right there. If you don't have the app, download it now and get this. If you already have the app, use the bonus code ATB316. That code again is ATB316. The offer ends Sunday, this Sunday the 12th. Must be 21 in Ohio. Eligible players only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-589-9966. Speaking of baseball, as I had mentioned last week, I had tickets to Saturday's Cubs-Guardians game. Unfortunately, on a gorgeous weather day in the afternoon, it was a night game. There were big storms, as we all know, that came through. Well, if you live in the area, you know that big storms came through Saturday night. Game rained out, rescheduled as a part of a doubleheader yesterday. So the good news is we got tickets to two games for one. Unfortunately, it was so cold out there, it was hard to take. My son and I had great seats. We had just an unbelievable view of the field, and we had fun. But, I mean, the first game was obviously all pitching. Cubs had 2 hits, Guardians had 1, and the Cubs won the game 1-0. By the 8th inning, I could barely take it anymore. We were so cold. Winter coats, and you saw it, or you were out there. I mean, not many people were out there. I saw a bunch of people that said hi. It was good to see a lot of the fans. We went up to the press box between games, but saw some of the guys, and we hung out there for a little bit. But then we left. I was just too cold. I couldn't take it. I couldn't stay for the second game. And the second game ended up being the better game. Overall, good weekend for the Guardians, despite going a number of innings without scoring. They exploded late in this game. It looked like they might be shut out in both games of a doubleheader. The Cubs won the first one 3-0, and then 1-0. And the Cubs had a 3-0 lead going to the bottom of the 6th. On home runs by Matt Shaw and Dansby Swanson. But the Guardians ended, I believe it was a 16-inning scoreless drought with 3 runs in the bottom of the 6th. Then when the Cubs regained the lead in the 8th, Guardians scored 3 more in the bottom of the 8th. Cubs made it a 1-run game in the 9th. And the Guardians and Cade Smith hold on for the 6-5 victory. C.J. Kayfus had a big one after started game 1, had the Guardians' only hit in the game. And then in game 2, he pinch hits for David Fry and comes through with a big homer. Also got another hit. So he goes 2 for 2 with 3 for 3 or had 3 hits in the doubleheader, including a home run. Austin Hedges off to a good start, hitting .500. He's 4 for 8 on the year with an RBI. And Gabriel Arias had 2 hits and knocked in 2 big runs in 2 big spots. So as much as he's frustrating and overall continues to be a huge disappointment, he did have a nice game Friday, and he had a good game in the second game of the doubleheader yesterday. Chase DeLauder had a sacrifice fly. He had another hit. The first game of this doubleheader was like the first time he didn't come through in a big spot as a runner got thrown out at the plate. Jose continues to struggle. Went 0 for 4 yesterday. Kwan only got 1 hit in the doubleheader. Rocchio hitless in the doubleheader. So not much hitting, but the Guardians got, I want to say 7 of their 9 hits or 6 or 7 of their 10 hits in the doubleheader in the last 3 innings of the game when they finally came alive. Angel Martinez didn't get a hit in the doubleheader either. C.J. Kayfus with the only Guardians home run. The starting pitching was great. Slade Ciccone did an excellent job in the first game of the doubleheader. The Cubs, I don't even think got a runner in scoring position against them, or maybe one. And Parker Messick very strong in the second game. 5 innings, 5 base runners, 1 run, 6 Ks, only 2 hits allowed. Bullpen not great, but they gave up most of the runs, but just enough. Cade Smith had some struggles again with some wildness, but he gets the strikeout to end the game, and the Guardians win the series 2-1 and are 6-4 to start the season. I got to tell you, before the season, if you would have said 6-4, you got to be thrilled with that. You've played 3 of, I think, at least the 8 best teams in the league. And I know the Cubs aren't off to a particularly good start, but trust me, they're going to be good. And the Guardians did a good job. And listen, this game was mostly about pitching. This series, there wasn't a lot of runs scored. In fact, there haven't been a lot of runs scored in most of the Guardians games. And even in the last game of the series, most of those runs were scored off the pen. Both starters pitched pretty well. But the Guardians' pitching's been tremendous so far for the most part. And to start 6-4 with the schedule they've had, you got to be very happy about that. They continue the homestand against Kansas City. The Royals are off to a so-so start at 4-5. They just lost 2 of 3 to the Brewers in their series. And then the Guardians after that will go to Atlanta and St. Louis before coming back home. Tanner Bybee will pitch tonight. It's a 6:10 start against Michael Wacha. Wacha was scratched from a start over the weekend and pushed back a couple of days. And then the Guardians will face 2 lefties in the rest of the series tomorrow. Gavin Williams against the youngster Noah Cameron at 6:10. And then a Wednesday afternoon game, Joey Cantillo against Cole Reagans. Again, this has been a very tough start to the season. The Guardians have had 1 day off. They'll get their second day off this Thursday. They've played a tough schedule. So I like where the Guardians are at. Obviously, the hitting has not been very good overall. But you got DeLauder, but the Guardians have scored just 32 runs. I believe that's last in the Red Sox have scored less. So the Red Sox have scored 30. The Guardians have scored 32. Second lowest total in the American League. Only the Reds. There's a few teams in the National League. I think they're tied for 6th from the bottom in terms of runs allowed, but runs scored. But they've only allowed 36 runs. The Tigers have given up 1 less, but they've played 1 less game. Mariners have given up 2 less. The Yankees have given up 14 less. Their pitching's been sensational. So the Guardians have a -4 run differential, but there's only 4 teams with a positive run differential in the American League. Yankees +25, Houston +15, and then the Tigers +7 and the Mariners +3. Everybody else, the Rangers are neutral, and everybody else is in the negative numbers. So Guardians in first place, again, being in first place at the 116th point in the season doesn't mean much. It's like being in first place after 1 game in the NFL season. But it is what it is. I guess you'd rather be in first than in last, and they are. Royals 4-5, Tigers 4-5, White Sox 4-5, and the Twins are 3-6. So the Guardians have played 1 more game than their division foes at this point of the year. And so now we move ahead for their first division series against the Royals. And again, the teams that the Guardians have played, the Dodgers are 6-0 against anybody but the Guardians. The Mariners are 2-4 against non-Guardians. The Cubs are 3-3 against non-Guardians. But I'm telling you, those are 3 of the Dodgers certainly, but those are 3 of the better teams in the league. So this start is really impressive, and I'm really happy about it. All right, today is a Q&A Monday, so I'm going to get to your questions in a second. But first, I want to let you know that if you're looking for a betting angle, check out the Top Picks news feed in your BetRivers app. Again, if you haven't downloaded the app, make sure you do it. And if you do have the app, make sure you're checking out the Top Picks news feed. The BetRivers Banter news feed is filled with picks from BetRivers Network personalities and more handicappers to give you expert insights. Tap the Top Picks icon in your BetRivers app to get the latest tips. Now let's get the latest questions from you, the fans. Actually, I just got a new one in. So, Ernie, I'm going to text you this question here that I just got under the wire. We'll add this one in at the end, and I'll answer it. So let's get to the questions that you folks have asked, and I'll give you the answers to the best of my ability. So, AA NC Northeast Ohio PTO Bro says, Adam the Bull, did you go to the doubleheader? Well, you already heard me. Yes, I did go to the doubleheader, but we left early. My son and I went to the doubleheader yesterday. Hold on, I need a little water. We did. We had a great time in the first game, but it was so cold that I said we left early. Wanted to stay for the second game, but the wind was kicking up. It was brutal out there, and I was dressed for football. Also, do you or have you ever done things alone, like go to restaurants, movie theater, or whatever you like with no company? Do you like it? I have gone to restaurants and to the movies by myself, and I love it. I mean, it's nicer going with someone. The movies, who cares? I'm not talking during the movies. I'm sitting and watching the movie. Now, it's nice to have somebody with you because then you could discuss it when the movie's over. But I'm not afraid. I don't understand people that are afraid to go somewhere by themselves. Now, I don't go to the restaurant and the movies by myself often, but once in a while. When I was single earlier in my life, I went all the time. I didn't care if when you're a young adult, I don't want to have to make plans all the time, you know what I'm saying? Especially when I was living in New York and it wasn't easy. Like now, I got plenty of friends that live 5 minutes away, so if it's easier to get around. When I was living in New York and New Jersey and single, I went to the movies all the time. It was like, is my friend going to drive for an hour to go to a movie with me? No. I'm a big boy, and I'm comfortable in my own skin, so I can go do things by myself. You should try it. I would sit, and a lot of times, even here in Cleveland, when I would, I'd go for lunch sometimes. A lot of times I go for lunch with Dustin or Keith or some of the guys from the radio station, but there were plenty of times I would just go, sit at the bar at a restaurant, not drinking, but eating. Okay, Ryan Cromer. What's up, Ryan? Ryan's in my fantasy baseball league. He says, what is the best way to divide the local sports media pie better amongst the three teams? Is it simply Browns talk sells more? Now, this is a very interesting question that I get from time to time. And it was something that I had to adjust to, being a big baseball guy and moving to Cleveland. When I started my radio career, in upstate New York, in a town called Utica, a small city called Utica, which is in the central New York area, for those who don't know. In between Syracuse and Buffalo, in between Syracuse and Albany, along the I-90 corridor, closer to Syracuse, about 45 minutes to an hour. And I was on a small station, and I probably had 50 listeners, if that many. And so I just talked about whatever I wanted there. Then I got a job in New York City with The Fan, and I was there for about 4 years as a fill-in host. And in New York, you could really talk baseball, football, basketball, about the Mets, Yankees, Giants, Jets, or even the Knicks, or even national baseball, football to some degree, most of the time. There was no pressure to do one thing over the other, and that's different here in Cleveland. Part of it is because, yes, the Browns sell more. There is true that there's more interest overall in the Browns than the Cavs and the Guardians. There's no denying that. As much as I don't love it, and some of you don't love it, that's the truth. However, I think we have done a bad job. I believe that those of you who listen to me want to hear me talk. If you like me as a host, then you're interested in what I have to say, even if it's not about the Browns, even if the Browns are your priority. Now, that might not be everybody that listens, but I think people that tell me, oh, I love you, I'm a big fan, I always believe people are going to listen to you if they like you, no matter what you're talking about. I guess if I started talking about some random thing for hours and hours, like soccer or whatever, something that's just completely off the radar, you'd lose interest. But so I think we've done a bad job. I think the Browns have become a crutch in this town. I think we're trying to do a better job here on the podcast, talking about the Guardians on UCSS. I'm not listening to the radio stations regularly. I listen to some of my guys on the fan occasionally, but really only when I'm in the car. I don't listen to KNR at all, so I'm not really sure what they're doing. But I think it's become a crutch. I also think that as younger people have come up in this business, they don't know baseball as well. Most of the young sports talk hosts, and even most of the guys my age, there's a lot of sports talk show hosts, both locally in Cleveland and nationally, that just don't know baseball as well. So you're going to lean towards the sports you know better. When I worked in New York, I talked mostly about the Yankees, the Mets, the Jets, and the Giants. I could have talked about the Knicks as much as those teams, but I didn't, because I didn't know basketball, or I felt like I didn't know basketball as well as I knew the other sports. So I tend to lean more on baseball or football. Those are sports I enjoy more, and those are the sports I know better. When I needed to, when there was a big Knicks story or the Knicks were in the playoffs, whatever, not that they were much when I was there, I had no problem talking about it, but I felt more confident and comfortable talking about baseball and football. And so that's what I talked about, and that's what I got calls about. And so it was a self-perpetuating thing. And I think that's the same thing in Cleveland. I think there's a lot of hosts that are not confident in talking about baseball, and so they stick with the hits because that's what they're comfortable with. And in Cleveland, in New York, I don't know what it's like now. I haven't worked on the Fan in 15 years. But in New York, when I was there from 2007 to 2011, no matter what time of the day you were on, even in the middle of the night when I did an overnight shift, you'd have a full bank of phone calls, always. There would always be people calling. And hosts can become too reliant on phone calls. And so you talk about what you think the people are going to want to call about. In Cleveland, that doesn't happen. Maybe it does now. I've now been away from the Fan for 4 years, doing podcasts for 4 years, and UCSS. And so maybe there's more phone calls. I don't know. But when you talked about the Browns, you would get more phone calls than you did about the Cavs or Guardians, unless it was some specific angle that was a hot button topic. And so people are more comfortable talking about the Browns, and that's it. So we could all be better about it. Okay, next one is from Kyle Barrett. Kyle says, the whole season the Browns proved they had the worst wide receiver room and worst O-line room and an offensive-minded, he says in air quotes, coach, well, not air quotes, the quotes are there, that had constantly underperformed. That being said, why is the media saying to draft a quarterback when we have one that flashed glimpses of talent with no talent around him? Here's the thing, Kyle. First of all, I don't think there's that many people talking about quarterback right now because there doesn't appear to be a great option for the Browns to get. And I don't think the Browns are going to draft a quarterback in the first round. The reason I've talked about quarterback, and I haven't really lately, but is because I'm not convinced Shedeur Sanders is the answer. Now, am I 100% convinced he's not? No, but as a rookie, he played poorly. You're right, there was no talent around him. I would argue that it would have been hard for most quarterbacks to have success, but he played particularly bad. Yes, there were glimpses of talent, but there are glimpses of talent in most quarterbacks. But I'm open-minded to giving Shedeur Sanders a second chance with better talent around him. I think the talent will be better this year. How much better, we'll see. I mean, in terms of skill positions, they haven't added any talent yet. I assume will do it in the draft, but rookies, you never know if they're going to work out, especially the later you get in the draft. So I think you're going to get this opportunity. But until you have a short thing at quarterback, you have to always, whether it's an organization or as a fan, you're always thinking about that position, because ultimately you're not going to win consistently in the NFL without good quarterback play. It's that simple. And if you can't get consistently good quarterback play, you're going to lose way more often than you win. And that's why people are still talking about quarterback. Colby Macbeth. I like that name. Are we to believe the Guardians organization has more faith in Arias over Rocchio? As of now, they have had him at short so far. Whoever is at second base will be the odd man out once Travis is up. And you're talking about Travis Bazzana. Okay. So I don't think the fact that Gabriel Arias is playing shortstop and Rocchio is playing second necessarily means that Rocchio is definitely going to be displaced when Bazzana comes up. Now, first of all, it's not a guarantee Bazzana comes up this year. Now, it is a disaster if he doesn't. It's a big problem. So far this year for Columbus, in 8 games, he's been to the plate 39 times. He has an OPS of 710. That's not good. He's not hitting particularly well. He's got a 212 batting average. He's officially 7 for 33, 6 runs, 2 doubles, 2 triples, no homers, 2 ribbies, 1 steal and 2 attempts, 5 walks, 6 strikeouts. Now, the 6 strikeouts is good, but the batting average, the on-base, the OPS are all, bad. The OPS is probably average for AAA, but the batting average and on-base are low. So he's not playing to a level where you're like, oh, they got to get him up right now. Now, at some point, you hope he gets up this season, plays well enough to get up. But when he does, yeah, it does. I guess you could argue it's odd. Well, why not get Rocchio some reps at short? I don't think it's been decided. Neither one's been particularly great. Arias has been better. He's hit of late. It's the same issue you have with Arias. He has a few at-bats where he looks amazing, and then he just strikes out and looks terrible for a while. But he had a nice series against the Cubs. We'll see. But I'm not convinced just because he's playing short right now that he's definitely going to keep his job when Bazzana comes up and Rocchio is either gone or relegated to the bench or whatever. I don't think that's definitive. But it is a clue that maybe they're leaning that way. But I'm not as convinced as you are, Colby. Next, take me out to the ball game. T. Kippy 68. What is your take on how the Cavs will do in the playoffs? I tell you, it's hard to say. It's hard to have a lot of confidence in the Cavs in the playoffs, and it has nothing to do with how they're playing this year or how they're playing right now. They did beat Indiana yesterday in a weird game. They got 4 games left in the regular season. But there's a lot going against them. One, their history in the postseason with this group, and I know this group doesn't include James Harden, he hasn't been with them in the playoffs, has been of disappointment. The Cavs have never won a playoff series where they were an underdog. They've only won series where they've been a significant favorite. They have not gotten past the second round. They lost to the Knicks. They lost to the Celtics. It's been an issue. Now, right now, they're in the 4 seed, which means if they beat Atlanta, they're probably going to play in the first round, they would then play most likely Detroit in the second round. But they're only up a game on the Knicks. And so, they could still end the 3 seed, which would mean you play Boston in the second round. You throw in James Harden. James Harden's a great player. He's a Hall of Famer. He's an all-time great. But James Harden has a terrible history in the postseason. So you combine the Cavs' terrible history in the postseason with James Harden's terrible history in the postseason, that's a lot to ask for them to turn it around. And I'm really just asking them, can you get to the conference finals? So am I confident that they will get there? I'm not. Do I think they could get there? Yes. I think they've got a better chance of beating the Pistons than they do the Knicks or Celtics. But that's maybe totally unfair. I mean, kudos to the Pistons. They've continued to play great basketball without their best player. Their coach, who we fired, is going to win Coach of the Year. He's done a tremendous job. They might win 60 games. They have 57 wins with 4 to go. I don't know how important it is for them to win 60 games. Cavs are going to win, 50 whatever. They're 49-29 with 4 to go. So I don't have confidence they're going to get past the semifinals. I don't. I wish I did. I'm hopeful. I think they'll certainly have a chance. I think the Cavs are capable of getting to the NBA Finals. I don't think anybody in the East is that good. But I think the Celtics with Jason Tatum back are clearly the favorites in the East. And the final question, Jim Kistler. Would you offer Chase DeLauder the same 10-year, $140 million contract the Pirates just gave their number 1 prospect? That number 1 prospect is Connor Griffin. Would I give him that? DeLauder, to me, is as good a prospect as Griffin. I think a lot of National Baseball people might disagree. You could argue Griffin's better, but here's why I'd be a little hesitant. He's been so injury-prone that I'd be nervous about giving that guarantee. But I'll say this in the end. If the Guardians offered him that and he accepted it, I'd be fine with it. But I could understand why they'd be nervous, and I could understand why he might turn it down. But in the end, I would be okay with that. Yes. I'd be nervous. I don't think the Guardians will do it. I think they're nervous about his injuries. I think it's something that I don't expect to happen, even though I'd love them to find a way to lock him up to an extension. All right, thanks everybody for joining me. Great questions from you folks. We'll do this again next week. Dustin and I'll be live on Tuesday at 9 a.m., so join us then. We'll be live on Thursday. I got a special guest coming up in the middle of this week in the podcast. I'll tell you about it more tomorrow. And I'll be on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week. Thanks to Ernie and Levi for producing today. Thanks all of you for watching and listening. I'll talk to you next time. Where else? But right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. See you, everybody.